Have you ever felt like life keeps getting more expensive, yet progress slips further away? Why do stable jobs vanish while living costs rise? What happened to the middle class that once shaped modern prosperity? The middle class was not just about money. It represented balance, the belief that steady work and fairness could build a decent life. Today, that balance feels broken as opportunity narrows. To understand this decline, we can look at four thinkers who explored the forces behind stability and collapse: Tocqueville, Keynes, Weber, and Schumpeter. Each saw how prosperity could grow and how it could quietly disappear. Alexis de Tocqueville, a young French aristocrat and political thinker, traveled across America in the 1830s. He saw towns filled with independent farmers, shopkeepers, and craftsmen. He realized that these ordinary people formed the real strength of democracy. Tocqueville admired this middle class because it gave citizens both pride and restraint. They had enough to live with dignity, but not enough to dominate others. That balance, he said, was the foundation of freedom. But he also warned that once people feel the system no longer rewards effort, resentment grows. They seek comfort in authority rather than responsibility. Freedom fades not through violence, but through disappointment. A century later, the Great Depression destroyed that fragile sense of stability. Factories closed, banks failed, and families lost homes. The middle class nearly disappeared under the weight of economic collapse. John Maynard Keynes, British economist who would later revolutionize modern economic thought in the 20th century, rose to prominence during this crisis. He challenged the idea that markets would fix themselves if left alone. He believed governments must step in to protect workers and restore confidence. After World War II, many nations followed Keynes's advice. They built social programs, invested in jobs, and encouraged fair wages. The result was decades of stability and shared prosperity. During the 1950s and 60s, families could plan their futures with confidence. One job could buy a home, raise children, and support retirement. The middle class became the heart of democratic life. But by the late 1970s, cracks began to show. Inflation surged, industry shifted overseas, and economic policy changed direction. The promise of guaranteed progress started to vanish. Governments embraced deregulation, lower taxes, and market freedom. Growth returned for some, but inequality widened. The middle class became squeezed between rising costs and stagnant pay. Max Weber, a German sociologist writing decades earlier, offered another warning. He described modern life as trapped inside an iron cage of bureaucracy and efficiency. People worked harder, but felt less meaning in what they did. Weber believed early capitalism had moral purpose, the idea that work was a calling. Over time, that purpose eroded into mechanical routines and impersonal systems. Work became a ritual without soul. You can see it today in the glow of endless screens and spreadsheets. People chase metrics, promotions, and performance reviews. But many feel more replaceable than ever before. The middle class once gave people identity through productive work. Now many feel trapped between fear of losing their job and lack of purpose in keeping it. This quiet anxiety defines much of modern life. Economists call the new shape of society an hourglass. As middle-income jobs vanish, leaving mostly high-end specialists and low-wage service roles. The space between them grows thinner every decade. Joseph Schumpeter, another economist from the 20th century, called this process creative destruction. He saw capitalism as an endless cycle, where innovation destroys the old to make room for the new. But progress always comes with casualties. When automobiles replaced horses, blacksmiths, and carriage makers vanished, when computers replaced typewriters, millions of clerical jobs were lost. Now artificial intelligence threatens to repeat the pattern across new industries. Schumpeter admired innovation, but feared what it would do to culture. As corporations grew, individuality and independence began to disappear. Capitalism, he warned, could erode the very values that sustained it. Today, a handful of global tech companies dominate communication, shopping, and information. They shape economies faster than governments can respond. The marketplace feels powerful yet distant from the lives of ordinary workers. Automation and outsourcing have also transformed the meaning of work. Young people jump between temporary gigs, contracts, and remote jobs. Security has turned into flexibility, often without choice. At the same time, the value of assets like homes and stocks rises far faster than wages ever could. For ordinary workers, owning a home or saving enough for retirement feels increasingly out of reach each passing year. Wealth now grows less from productivity or hard work and more from property ownership and accumulated capital. Tocqueville's old fear returns once again. When personal effort no longer leads to any sense of fairness or upward mobility, public trust begins to crumble. Citizens start believing the entire system is built to serve someone else's interests. That quiet, growing belief can slowly corrode democracy from within, weakening its very foundation over time. Weber's iron cage has evolved into something unmistakably digital. Algorithms now track workers' every move, measure performance, predict future behavior, and even determine who gets promoted or left behind. In this new world, efficiency gradually replaces empathy, and people find themselves struggling to hold on to any real sense of meaning within a system obsessed with precision and control. Keynes would have argued that markets can never solve this problem on their own. He believed that real prosperity depends on deliberate investment in people, communities, and shared purpose. Without collective confidence and a sense of direction, entire economies slowly drift into stagnation, leaving opportunity and potential untapped. Schumpeter would counter that change is not only inevitable, but essential for progress. The challenge, he'd say, is never to halt innovation, but to steer its course wisely. When adaptation lags behind the pace of technology, destruction inevitably overtakes creation, leaving communities scrambling to recover from the shock. The middle class has always been more than just an income bracket on a chart. It acts as a stabilizing bridge between ambition and fairness, linking rich and poor through shared hopes of progress. When that bridge begins to shrink or crumble, both capitalism and democracy lose their balance, and polarization fills the gap where trust once lived. Rebuilding a strong middle class requires far more than nostalgia for the past. It demands modern education systems that prepare workers for emerging industries and fair wages that truly reward skill and contribution. It also means redefining economic growth itself, focusing less on speed and more on stability, sustainability, and dignity in work. Technology can and should serve humanity, but only when guided by a moral purpose. Innovation ought to enhance the quality of life, not hollow it out in the name of efficiency. The real question today is whether society still values that deeper purpose, or if we have allowed progress to serve only its own momentum. History reminds us that renewal is always possible when societies act with courage and foresight. Tocqueville, Keynes, Weber, and Schumpeter all believed that human agency still matters, even in the face of powerful systems. We are the architects of our institutions, and they do not have to shape us unless we choose to let them. If you found this exploration meaningful, hit like and subscribe to keep the conversation going. Share your thoughts on how we can rebuild stability and fairness in the age of automation. The middle class once built the modern world, and with vision and resolve, it can build a new foundation for the future.